Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news on one of my favourite news morning shows, actually, Sunday, because you get a lot of different stuff on a Sunday. So we're going to be talking about a Mason Greenwood swap deal with an Italian giant. I've known the name of an Italian wrestler that was big. I could have told a joke, but I'm talking about a football team and it's Juventus. We're also going to be talking about a new deal for Scott McTominay. A lot of outlets talking about that this morning. We shouldn't be shocked. We spoke about it 2 weeks ago. Also, a little bit about Southgate. We'll talk about that and the midfield situation. There are a few wrong stories floating around about players that we're looking at. We'll give you the latest on that. Don't forget, tonight at 7 o'clock, we've got the evening show, which is going to be very interactive. You don't want to miss it. And also tomorrow, we've got Fabrizio Romano on the show, which will be very good to talk about people like Frimpong, midfielders, etc. So lots to get into on the United Stand in the future. But for the now, let's get straight into it with the latest news. And we're going to talk about Mason Greenwood to start off with. Thomas says, are you leaving the United Stand? No, I don't know where this is coming from. Give us more detail. Maybe I am. I don't know. Maybe maybe there's a coup. I don't know what's going on with that. Let me talk to you about Mason Greenwood. So in the papers yesterday, a little bit late for us to get it in the morning show. I think it came out around lunchtime. Italian outlet Gazzetta dello Sport was talking about. It could have been Corriere dello Sport actually. It was one of the dello Sports. Basically talking that Juventus hold a strong interest in Mason Greenwood. Now, this is true. We get fixated on La Liga because of Barcelona, Atletico Madrid and Getafe, but there is interest in Italy and there always has been interest in Italy for Mason Greenwood, even last summer on loan. So Juventus are interested in Mason Greenwood, very interested in Mason Greenwood. And there's talk of a swap deal. The interesting thing about the swap deal is that the sort of players that they're talking about are completely wrong. They're basically saying that Bremer, the Brazilian centre-back, who didn't even play for Brazil's B team yesterday, which lost to Southgate, more of that in a minute, could be used as part of the swap deal. I mean, look, what I will say straight away is that there is an opportunity for Mason Greenwood to go to Italy. There is a Mason Greenwood to Juventus scenario. It's not just about Barcelona or Atletico Madrid. There are other clubs interested, and from a Manchester United point of view, this is great. From a Mason Greenwood point of view, it's great to have options, and obviously it helps with the price that we want to achieve, which is about 35-40 million quid, which will obviously be very useful for us in the plans that we have this summer. Swap deals, I just think we need to be a little bit, there's levels of people when it comes to transfers, and we've been doing this for many years, and because you do it for many years, you become very educated in how transfers work. And I learned things from yourselves, like we did about Frimpong being homegrown yesterday, which I think was massive. But swap deals are just not going to happen. Like, they're not going to happen. With FFP, they become even harder to do because the value of the player cannot be inflated anymore. There used to be a situation, Barcelona were very good at it, where you'd do a swap deal and you'd inflate the value of the player for both clubs, so that a player that's worth 30 million, both clubs say they're worth 80 million. And then you register that on the books, and it's a way of, manipulating your FFP or whatever like that. The rules around swap deals have changed a lot. Mason Greenwood's value in a swap deal would be, and I don't know the technical side of this, I saw it the other day, his value as a homegrown player is really low in a swap deal or something like that. I don't know what it is, but swap deals are also, there's an FFP issue, and also they're very difficult to do anyway, because if Juventus just buy Mason Greenwood, they deal with Man United and the agent and it's easy. But if we swap a player, you've got to double all that work. And also, how often does it actually suit both clubs? Like, is there a Juventus player you'd swap for Mason Greenwood? Well, there might be, because Greenwood's not played with us for 2 years. So you probably would go, well, don't really class him as a player of Man United anyway, because we haven't used him for 2 years. So I wouldn't mind that from Juventus. But in a normal situation, it's difficult to find the swap. So I don't agree with the swap side of it. I don't agree that we're in for Bremer. I really do not. I said this to you a few times. We did it on the hit list, the transfer list show on Wednesday. Bremer for me is just another player that's just being, Man United's name is being used. We're not in for him. There's Todibo, there's Branthwaite. There are other centre-backs that are ahead of Bremer. So we're not looking at him, and he's not going to be a player that we're going to look to do a swap deal with Mason Greenwood. However, if Juventus have got the financials, I think there's a good deal there for Juventus to pay 35, 40 million pound for Mason Greenwood. I don't know whether they can raise it. Italian football and money doesn't really go hand in hand that much in recent years, but there is certainly interest there. And I think from a Manchester United point of view, that can only be a good thing. It can only be a good thing because we need to sell players in the summer, and whoever we're going to sell, I think, you want interest to be there. We're not going to have a lot of interest in people like Donny van der Beek. We will have interest in people like Mason Greenwood, Harry Maguire, Rafael Varane, Casemiro, Scott McTominay, maybe even Sancho. So there are certain players that we can move on, and the more players that are interested, the better. And you don't want to end up with a situation where there's only really one viable option for Mason Greenwood, and it's Atletico Madrid, and they can bring the price down. So I think it's a good thing, but the swap deal absolutely won't happen. Are you going to play FC25 when it comes out? And also, Adarabeo is linked to United as well, says Brandon. Thank you very much for that update. You can bring your own news in as well. Savage says, Juventus really shouldn't waste the opportunity. It'd be a good signing for them. And also, Thuto, who's a member, says, Juve will probably look at Martial on a free. I don't know what happens with Martial. And if I'm being absolutely honest, we get asked about Martial quite a lot. And this situation with Martial is irrelevant to me. He's out of contract in the summer. We've needed him this year, and he's not been there. I've been a big fan of Martial over the years, but I'm indifferent. I mean, what has he offered us in the last year? Nothing. So, where he goes, I don't really care. I wish him all the best, but I don't really care. Robin McCormack says 12 goals and assists this season. I think that's a combination, isn't it, Robert? I don't think he's got 12 goals and 12 assists this season, but maybe you could clarify that. Interestingly, talking about Saba says that Rashford's our best player. Got an interesting thing to bring in about Rashford that sort of sparked a bit of a debate on social media last night. We'll bring that in a moment, but basically it was rather... In fact, it will fit nicely in with the McTominay thing, which I want to talk to you in a moment. But Varane is out of contract as well, says Jay. Some good comments coming in here. He is out of contract. I want to talk to you just very quickly about the manager situation at Manchester United. I mean, I don't think any of us want to talk about it because we've got some really big games coming up. There's some players that really need to deliver, and I want stability going into the summer so we can have a clear out. But what an absolute prat Southgate is, and what an absolute prat the journalists look like. Oh my God. Spending all week bigging up Gareth Southgate as a Manchester United manager to serve up that shit moose last night. What a waste. I mean, I watched it. I did a watch along on That's Football, and basically I was doing a Q&A. It was absolute turgid, festering crap. And the fact that this was my frustration last week, and I think it was your frustration as well. The fact that we are not manipulated, that doesn't happen anymore. The fact that we are subjected to this pile-on last week, and you can't do anything about it. Every article you read, Southgate to Man United, why Southgate would be good to Man United. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. It's like going to school in a pink dress. I mean, look, some people in a pink dress would look good, but for me, that would be embarrassing. 1, to be back at school, and 2, to be in a pink dress. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And look, if you want to go to school in a pink dress, it's up to you. I realise it's 2024 and you can't discriminate, but I would find it embarrassing to go to school in a pink dress. And that's my feelings, which must be respected. So get careful what you say these days. But the point is, it was embarrassing that Manchester United were linked to Gareth Southgate last week. And we felt humiliated as a fan base. We felt confused. We felt scared. We felt manipulated. We felt violated. And it was a horrible week. But throughout all that, there was just this constant message from United fans: I will stop supporting Man United if you do this. Why are we being linked to this prat? And, it carried on all week. Maybe Ineos could have done something about it. Maybe they are looking at Southgate. The scary thing for me is, if Ineos are looking at Southgate, we all saw last night what wasn't a one-off. That is what he does. He takes a collection of good players and turns them into crap. It's like me walking into the kitchen, having been to, I don't know, Harrods, and got all the best ingredients for a Sunday dinner. And then I leave it and I come back, and instead of the best roast dinner you've ever seen, it's just a big pile of shit. And I'm like, how have we done that? How have we created that? And that's what Southgate does with England. He has the best ingredients and he somehow serves up a plate of shit. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I think that, you know, I mean, Hoppy says, Talk Sport even going as far as saying that we definitely spoke with Southgate. I blame them more than any for those false stories. But yeah, well, look, fair play, shout them out. I mean, God almighty, we 2 weeks ago, we got absolutely slaughtered by the mainstream and the whole of fucking social media for something that never happened around the Rasmus interview. These people actually put this bollocks and spin out, says Melps, about Southgate. But you know what? I don't sit here in any position of a told you so, and I'm sure you don't as well. What we saw last night, I'm not even like, I told you. I'm simply like, well, this is it. I mean, Gareth Southgate's PR is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. You know, he's a great man manager. Everybody likes him. And yet, what people don't realise is that's not good enough to be a fucking football manager. Ronald McDonald's very popular with kids. They love him. Kids pile into McDonald's every day, millions of them. There's nothing in there that's good for them. The bag of salad, no one's ordering that. No one's ordering that. What people need to realise is just because people like something doesn't mean it's actually good for them. The England players like going to St George's Park and linking up with their England teammates. When have they ever produced anything good from it? Oh, so you all get on. Great. You really get on. Gareth's a really nice guy, yeah? Why do you play shit football for years then? Where's the positive of the fact that you all like Gareth? When has there ever been a positive? Oh, we got to the final of the Euros, at home Euros, and we bottled it. Oh, we got to the semi-final of a World Cup, probably the weakest World Cup I've ever seen, and we bottled it against Croatia. I don't see the win with the fact that Gareth's such a nice guy. And also, even getting to the final, even getting to the semi-final, the football has been crap for years. I don't think there's a team in the Premier League that plays like England. Luton play better football than England. And this guy is being linked to the Man United job. I'm not even getting stressed or angry about it now. I'm just saying, I told you so. I told you so. And I think you're all saying the same. We saw last night what he does. Phil Foden's been one of the best players in the Premier League this year. I didn't even know he was on the pitch. He was doing an impression of Scott McTominay. Like, you know, he may as well run around going Scooby-Doo. Like, he was where are you? He was invisible. Absolutely invisible. Declan Rice, one of the best players in the Premier League this season, subjected to being absolutely useless holding midfielder. Not allowed to go forward. Ollie Watkins, one of the best strikers in the Premier League this year, living on scraps at home. It was absolutely rubbish. And if anybody in Ineos or Manchester United think that guy is a Man United manager, then I would sell your shares and piss off back to Nice because you haven't got a bloody clue about football. Absolutely ridiculous. Whoever is telling you to look at that guy as a Man United manager shouldn't be involved in Man United. Go and give him a job at Middlesbrough because that's where they are. That's the sort of expectations and fans and, you know, understanding of a football club you've got. That's not a Man United mentality to associate Southgate with Manchester United. I don't care whether it's Ashworth saying it. I don't care whether it's Sir David saying it. I don't care whether it's whoever it is. They haven't got a bloody clue if they're linking that to Manchester United. He's absolutely pitifully shit. Anyway, Karen. Hi, Mark. What is embarrassing is the club legend Roy Keane supporting the appointment of Southgate. They may be legends, but they aren't as educated as some people in our community, says Karen. I mean, you might get a bit of kickback on that, but look, all I would say on that is it wouldn't be the first time that an ex-player has spoken nonsense about managers for Manchester United. You should have seen some of the names that were coming out instead of Eric Ten Hag. So yeah, Anyway, look, we can go back to that. Robert McCormack says, I meant Scott McTominay has got 12 goals and assists this season. Well, that's well timed because I want to talk about McTominay now. So, a few outlets this morning, it is Sunday morning in the UK, are talking about Scott McTominay and a new deal. Manchester United and Ineos are ready to hand Scott McTominay a new deal. We shouldn't be surprised about this. We should not be surprised about this. I said this to you 2 weeks ago. Oh, wait, maybe it was last Monday. Maybe it was a week ago. It was a Monday night show. And basically, there are 3 players that will not be sold by Manchester United this summer. I got told this from a very good source within the football club. Manchester United will not be selling Marcus Rashford. They will not be selling Bruno Fernandes. And they will not be selling Scott McTominay. Those 3 players, this should not be coming as a shock to the United Stand community. We spoke about this. It was from a really good source. They're not going to get sold. Whether you want them to be or not, they will not be sold. This morning, we're getting reports that Scott McTominay is very close to being given a new contract. So this is incredible. I mean, I'm sure Robert's very happy about it. But the fact that Ineos, who are carrying out a strategic review, are already preparing a new contract for Scott McTominay shows how important they think he is to the Manchester United future vision. What are my thoughts on that? I'm not surprised by it because I, was told this, that they were going to keep him. And with 18 months left on his contract, if you're keeping somebody for another year, you better be talking about a new contract as well. So I suppose it's logical that would happen. My big issue with it is that I don't get. There's a bit of a contradiction going on here. On the one hand, there's this devolution of powers of the manager so that the structure above it can dictate transfers and style of play. There is this conversation that Sir Jim Ratcliffe has had about how we want to play like Liverpool and Man City. We've got to play better football. We've got to play Manchester United football. And there's all this talk about better football and style of play. And yet there's glaringly obvious players in that team that just do not fit it. And look, I've always said with McTominay, I would sell him, because he's got a value. And Robert's right. He scored goals this season, so his value's even bigger. And he's a homegrown player. That's £30 million of pure profit going into a transfer budget, which we desperately need. So for me, it's not even about the player. He's not a starter. He's got a value. He's homegrown. That's a massive boost to our transfer budget. So he's up for sale for me. It's as simple as that. No emotion. They're the reasons. The footballing reason, I'm still baffled. Like, if we want to play like Liverpool, Scott McTominay wouldn't get on the bench for Liverpool. If we want to play like Arsenal, he doesn't get on the bench for Arsenal. If we want to play for like Man City, they won't even let him in the training ground, even if he just wants to have a tour. So why are we keeping a player like that? He's a plan B, is what I'm trying to say. Who in top level football has a plan B now? It's all plan A. It's plan A. If Nunez isn't doing well for Liverpool, he comes off and Jota comes on and they keep playing the same way. If Kevin De Bruyne is having a bad game, then Bernardo Silva moves into that position or Foden moves into that position and they keep playing the same way. I've never seen Arsenal, Man City or Liverpool in the last 10 minutes or 20 minutes go and bring on a completely different option and start pinging long balls into the box. So McTominay's really good at that. He's very good in and around the box. But it's plan B, and it worked brilliantly against Brentford. But is that really how you get into a title race, where it's not working, so let's just throw long balls into the box to McTominay? I just don't... I think it's an archaic way of playing football. And also, as we know with McTominay, if he doesn't score a goal, he doesn't do anything else. I also think that the midfield gets overrun a lot with him in the team because he's constantly getting forward and then he can't get back. And I also think that he's constantly getting in the box in the way of where Rasmus wants to be. So... yeah, McTominay scored a few goals this season, and they've been important goals. They 100% have. But long term, I think for now it works. I think this season it's been perfect. The way the team is at the moment, perfect. But if we want to move forward, I'm confused why we're keeping players like this, because all he'll ever be is what he is. He's 27, I think now. All he'll ever be is a player that breaks into the box constantly. So that will get overrun in the midfield, or we're going to ping long balls in the box next season. What my main point is, and I remember Robert saying this a year ago, I'll put up with it for a year, but I want to see a better style of football. If we want to see a better style of football, why are we keeping players that can't do that? It's weird to me. And somebody said, well, Sir Alex Ferguson used to do this. I don't want to remind you, but Sir Alex Ferguson's not been managing for nearly 12 years now. So, you know, should we talk about what Sir Matt Busby used to do as well? Because football's moved on massively in the last 12 years. There's not many clubs that have a plan B option anymore that are at the top of football. What I will say is that, look, this leads into a bigger point. And look, we may as well run a poll on this. It's a very good one to do it. So, and it's going to lead lovely into the show tonight. Don't miss the show tonight. It's going to be very interactive. But would you keep or sell McTominay? Keeping him means a new contract anyway. You have to do that. It's 100% sure. But I think that... I think this leads into an educated conversation that many other people don't want to have. I'm basically saying that I would sell McTominay because of the value he has, and I don't think he's, you know, he's a ghost. He's a ghost in so many games. He can't tackle. He can't pass. He got an assist against Liverpool. I think it's his first assist of the season, which is amazing when he's playing as a, you know, basically an attacking midfielder. I think he's a very, you know, average midfielder. In relation to the top six, and we should cash in. But also, I don't think he's got the intelligence to play in a decent footballing side. I just don't think he fits a team that we want to progress to be. But there was an amazing comment last night on Twitter where a Man United account had basically been talking about Garnacho, and they said Garnacho is doing amazingly well considering he's playing out of position to accommodate a left winger who shouldn't be playing ahead of him, who only plays ahead of him because his brand and Manchester born and bred PR enables him to elongate his career at Manchester United. He's not a team player, and he's all about scoring goals for himself. And of course, he was talking about Marcus Rashford. I actually replied to it and I said, it's a very brave tweet because you're going to get absolutely piled on now. But in a way, if we want to play a different brand of football, Marcus Rashford's got to completely change the way he plays football. And this is the thing that I'm sort of confused about at the moment when it comes to next season, because Bruno's not going to be sold, Rashford's not going to be sold, and McTominay's not going to be sold. Two of those players will definitely start next season. One of them's definitely going to get game time. And all three of them cannot play the style of football that Arsenal, Liverpool, Man City play, i.e. possession, patient-based football. They don't play like that. So are we already at a point where we're going, there's this talk of next season and Ineos are going to implement this style of football, yet they're keeping players who will play who can't do that. And it's really hard to have the conversation because the minute you try and have the conversation, you get the pile on from Bruno FC and Rashford FC, of which I like both players. But there is a conversation to be had there. If I saw, you know, I'm not going to judge Rashford for England, but he came on for 20 minutes and did exactly what he does for Man United. Head down, trying to take on 3 or 4 players and get a shot off when there's simple crosses into the box. There was one for England in the last 5 minutes. He's in the box. There's 3 England players square to him, and he tries to take another player on. And I'm like, there is a real grown-up conversation to be had here. Marcus Rashford, Bruno Fernandes, Scott McTominay need to change the way they play football. Otherwise, we're never going to be able to play the football people want us to play. McTominay doesn't track runners and keeps getting in the box, and that causes problems. Rashford doesn't pass and keeps taking people on and shooting, and Bruno just gets rid of the ball too quickly, in my opinion, looking for a Hollywood pass. None of those 3 things are conducive to playing the way that many people want us to play. So it's contradictory in the sense that, you know, you listen to Sir Jim saying we want to play like Liverpool or Man City, but then we're gonna keep players that can't do it. It's a contradiction, isn't it? Unless those players are suddenly going to change the way that they play. And I don't know whether that's possible, especially at their age profile. They're all in their late 20s. McTominay and Rashford, I think, are 27 now or next. Bruno's 30 next. So I think it's an interesting conversation. And last night that ended up on social media just being about, you love Rashford, you hate Rashford, you know, and that's not what the conversation was actually about. The conversation was about 25% of our front four isn't, well, actually, it's more than that. I mean, how much of our front four actually suits patient, possession-based football, which I think you have to have in the modern game? Not all the time. You can have a moment of flair, but yeah, I think there's a conversation to be had there, and look, I worry about Rashford. I do. I worry about Rashford. I just think he doesn't pass the ball enough. He doesn't want to pass the ball enough. It's not what he's all about. He wants to score goals. Last season, he was absolutely fantastic. I saw something this morning that over 40% of his goals last year actually came from attack. So are we actually living a lie that he scores 30 goals a season from left wing? I don't know. Maybe he will do next season, but to what detriment does that have on the overall team? Somebody can score 30 goals and you can still finish 6th because you're not providing service to your striker and other players. This is something we've got to work on massively in the summer. It's a massive conversation. And you know what? Maybe Ten Hag saying to Ineos, I can play the style of football that you want with Bruno and Rashford. They're absolutely massively important for me. But I'm not saying that it's exclusively a Rashford or a Bruno or a McTominay or an Ineos problem. It could be a bloody Ten Hag problem. If he's saying that we can play good football with those 3 players next year, well, that's on the manager as well. We will find out. We will find out next year, won't we? But I have a problem with the way we play football at the moment. I have a problem with it because, as I said yesterday, I put a tweet out yesterday. We mentioned it a few days ago. Rasmus Højlund is 30th in the Premier League for shots. Just not getting any service. That needs to change massively. How are you going to do that when Bruno, Rashford and Garnacho aren't providing him the service? We have to be. There's a reason we are where we are in the league. You look at Watkins, you look at Nunez, you look at Son, you look at Solanke, you look at Haaland. They're getting a lot of shots because they're getting a lot of service because they're in teams that create chances for their strikers. We're in a team that doesn't create chances for our strikers and we're 6th in the league. It's easy to see what the problem is. My point exactly with regards to Ten Hag's style at Ajax, there's no way we're playing like that with Bruno, Rashford and Maguire. Why did we get Ten Hag, says Sam. And Hayden says, we need goals this season, and realistically, Scott has provided us with more goals than some of our forwards. He is a decent sub. I would keep him until we get more people that can give us goals, says Hayden. And that's an interesting point, Hayden. But I go back to what I'm saying there. Do you watch the game of football, or are you just appreciating goals? Because the goals have been really important. The Brentford goals especially got us 3 points we never would have got. But it was chaos football. It was chaotic. Are we, you know, two or three of our results this season have been amazing, but they've been founded on chaos. That last 10 minutes against Brentford, you couldn't play that in a normal game. It was just chaos. It was a defence trying to defend against a team that was just throwing the ball in the box. Liverpool, in extra time, it was chaotic. You know, you've got Bruno playing at centre-back. So chaos football doesn't win you titles. Chaos football doesn't win you the Champions League. It might get you a couple of results a season, but chaos football doesn't work. So what's the point in keeping players that survive off chaos football? We need to have a system, and we need to have 20 players that can play that system. What I don't believe we need is 13 players who can play a system and 7 players who can play chaos ball that you throw on in the last 20 minutes and play chaotic. That's not what Man City do. It's not what Arsenal do. It's not what Liverpool do. They have players that can play the system, and if they don't work, they bring others on. I think that's the way we need to go. But Sam is absolutely right. We haven't actually followed through with any manager on providing them with the players that they need to do that. And you go back to the summer. West Ham wanted to buy Maguire. United didn't do the deal. Ten Hag wanted Kim Min-jae. United didn't do the deal. They brought Johnny Evans in. From a stylistic point of view, they're completely opposites. So you end up with a team that can't play the style that Ten Hag wants because the players he wants haven't been brought in. Basil says, how many goals have Rashford and McTominay cost us? I don't know. I don't know, mate. I don't know in relation to that. Anyway, in relation to a new deal for McTominay, which we expect to be signed in the next few weeks, 70% of you wouldn't give it. You'd sell him. 30% of you would. So that's the poll on that. Sticking with the midfield situation, a lot of talk about the midfield. We spoke about it on The List, which is our Hotometer transfer show, which we do weekly now. In relation to the midfield situation, I think Edison from Atalanta was a very, very high priority. But as we know, last week, Fabrizio was talking about it, saying that a midfielder in general is low priority for Manchester United now, and if they were going to do something, they might revisit it later in the summer. Well, we've got Fabrizio on the show tomorrow, and I think this is going to be the biggest question we're going to ask him. You know, what's that all about, Fabrizio? Because every United fan wants a midfielder. You know, we need another midfielder. Casemiro, whether his legs have gone, whether he's suspended, whether he's injured, we can't rely on that. That leaves us with Mainu, the only guy who can do that role, and I still think Mainu is better as an 8. So we need to bring in a midfielder. Why is it that United, yet again, are not prioritising that position? Well, we'll ask Fabrizio about that tomorrow. But where are we today? There are people out there talking about João Neves. For the millionth time, we are not signing João Neves. And I would love that to be a clip with, we've signed João Neves, because I'm not Man United's director of football. I would love that to happen. And weird things can happen in a transfer window. We saw it before. This time last year, we weren't selling De Gea, and in June we did it, and we bought an Arna for 50 million quid. Amazing. Things can change around very, very quickly. But I think the Neves talk is just a waste of everybody's oxygen. Like, Benfica do not, have not, and will not buckle on a release clause which is north of 100 million quid. They won't do it. They don't need to do it. They don't want to do it. He's 19. He's Portuguese. They don't need to sell him. And they know a lot of people are looking at him. They don't need to go, oh, United, we've heard we like Ineos, you can have him for 40. He's going to go for 100 million quid. And we're not going to pay 100 million quid for a midfielder that isn't even a priority position at the moment. So the talk about Neves is fantasy. And that's the cold, harsh reality about it. I think if you're looking at other players in the midfield, you've got to look at players that might be available a little bit later in the summer, that other clubs aren't going to go for, that we might raise money for and be able to go for a little bit later in the transfer window. We're clearly not going to be in for top level midfielders that other clubs want, are going to be fighting for at the start of the window. So, you know, I would rule out as many of those as you can. And where do I think we end up? I still think someone like Rabiot's interesting. Paulina is another one, Jake. Completely forget about Paulinho from Fulham. He will move and he will not be at Manchester United. What about Onana at Everton? Again, I think there's going to be too much competition for him at the start of the window. I've heard about Onana. I've heard about Neves. I've heard about Paulinho. A lot of United fans are mentioning about them. Some people are talking about, you know, there's even a chance that we're going to sign them. But it doesn't fit where we are at the moment. Now, look, maybe we can get a little bit more clarity tomorrow from Fabrizio, but where we are at the moment is that United are not prioritising a high-value midfielder. They're certainly not prioritising high-value signings full stop. Onana, Paulinho and Neves are all high-value midfielders that have got 2 or 3 clubs looking at them each. We're not in that conversation. So I would point United for a midfielder. You know, I don't even know if we can do Gomez from Wolves, actually, because there are a couple of clubs interested in him as well. So I think that, like just Keevan says, maybe Gomez at Wolves, well, he certainly fits the price tag and he certainly fits the profile. But if we're not prioritising a midfielder, somebody else will prioritise him quicker than us. So, I mean, to be honest with you, if Fulham sell Paulinho for, let's say, 60, 65 million, I wouldn't be surprised if they moved for Gomez themselves. So, yeah, I think that we've just got to be a bit realistic about the midfield situation and realise that people like Neves, Paulinho and Onana are just ridiculously unlikely. There's too much competition and there's too much price attached to those players. And it might be that we don't look at anybody till later in the window, which again would lead you. I mean, if we're being completely blunt, we do it with Murta, we do it with Woodward, we did it with Arnold, did it with the Glazers. How can you be successful if you don't go for option 1 or 2? and you keep buying option 4 or 5. And I think in the midfield, you can already see that if option 1 is Neves, no. If option 2 is Palhinha, no. If option 3 is Anana, no. If option 4 is Kimmich, no. You know, you're moving down to option 5 or 6. When I hear that we're going to look at a midfielder later in the summer transfer window, that automatically means to me we're not going to get any of Ten Hag's top 5 targets. If you're buying at the end of the window, it's like buying Christmas presents on Christmas Eve at a 24-hour service station. You're not doing it in John Lewis, are you? You're not getting whatever you want. So I think there's a flip side to that. I think we will be shopping 1 or 2 options in it when it comes to centre backs and other areas. But I think in the midfield, it's probably not going to be as big as some people want. Eddie says, buy British players only, no more foreign crap. Brexit means Brexit, doesn't it, Eddie? Isn't the point to find someone we don't know, says John. Yeah, well, good scouting. I think you took the words right out of my mouth, as Meatloaf once sang. 100%, John. I think it is about that. It's about finding players that people aren't fully aware of. I think that there might be a midfielder in South America that costs you 10 million. There might be a midfielder in France that costs you 20 million. There might be someone in Portugal that costs you 15. That's the sort of thing that we should be looking at doing. There is look, some of these players are really good. João Neves looks fantastic. He's probably going to play for Man City, so I wouldn't get too attached to him. But Jonathan says, Jonathan Livingston says, no imagination or out-of-box thinking with our transfer targets. Always overspend with inflated transfer fees linked with all the wrong players. We could be getting Lewis Ferguson from Bologna for cheap as well. And this is what I mean. Good scouting. Good scouting is what Manchester United need. With Bruno's form and Mount coming back in, is it not the perfect timing for Mount to be pushing for the number 10 spot? If Mount can't push into the team, isn't it a big mystery why we bought him, says Benjamin. I think this is a great point. Where is Mason Mount going to fit into this team after the break? Because he's going to be back fit for Brentford, fully fit, absolutely ready to go. What are we going to do? Put Bruno on the right wing again? I mean, I don't believe for 1 minute that we bought Mason Mount to put Bruno Fernandes on the right wing. So, there's a lot of things that are very interesting as to how this is going to pan out, I think. Koku is exciting and unhappy at Benfica, says Rahul. And I just hope that there are a lot of players that United are going to go for in the summer that no one's talking about at the moment. I mean, it's good fun to do the Hotometer, etc. And I know that we're, really in for like Frimpong and Tadibo and Elise. But we could play Bruno at centre-back, says Angel. But I really hope that we are looking at players that are well scouted, because it would really make a massive difference for Manchester United if we can start buying players of that calibre that people don't really know about. Anyway, look, loads for you to get your teeth into there. I'm going to do a video on That's Football about Southgate. Actually, it's going to go up in a minute. But we've spoken about that. We've spoken about McTominay. We've spoken about the Greenwood swap. We've spoken about the midfield situation. That's where we are this Sunday morning. You don't want to miss the show at 7 o'clock tonight. It's going to be an absolute cracker, and it's going to be very, very interactive. So that's all I'm going to tell you for now. But 7 o'clock tonight, actually. I will see you there for that. Take care. Have a fantastic day. Smash a like on the video and subscribe. I'll speak to you later.